Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Passionately Wrong podcast. I'm James Bellershow, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Randall Searles. And today we're going to continue a discussion we've been having about the publishing world. And we've previously discussed self-publishing versus traditional publishing and some pros and cons in that. And now I think we want to take a slightly deeper dive into, okay, you've made a choice to self-publish. We've convinced you, Randy's convinced you of the virtues of that approach. It turns out there is more detail and more nuance about how you can improve your chances of success in the self-publishing area. And Randy, I think you've been to a conference recently where you heard somebody talking about their approach. Is that a good way to get into this topic, or how should we set the stage for our watchers and listeners?
Yeah, I'll give some free marketing to the conference. It's 20 books to 50K, which we've mentioned before. It's a Facebook group, very generous Facebook group of people that just want to help other self-published authors, indie authors, and what strategies and techniques work to write and market and publish your books. It's huge. And they have a big week-long Vegas thing every October, I think it is, which I've never been to, which I'd like to go one year. And then they have smaller ones that have leaked into Europe for the people who can't make it to the US. And they have this one in Sevilla, Spain, which is where I live right now. And they used to have last year, they had one in the Netherlands too, but I don't think it was big enough for them to do it again this year. I think they canceled it this year. Maybe it'll come back. And it was a lot smaller. It was about half the size of the Sevilla one that I went to last year. And then they have London. They have one that kind of coincides or lives within the London Book Conference that happens every year, which is, I think, this next week as well.
So you refer to them being generous. Do you pay to go to this thing? Is it generous?
The Facebook book, it's 20 books to 50K. We talked a little bit about this. The idea was a gentleman named Michael Enderand. I can't pronounce his name, but if you look up 20 books to 50K founder, you'll see what his name is. But he's an American, and he tells the story when he made this Facebook group about, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago, that he was a writer. He was writing books. He was marketing his books, and he was in all these writer Facebook groups. And he's, hey, I may be not telling the completely accurate story. It's his story. But the way I remembered it was like, hey, let's talk about the business of selling books. And he kept getting pushback, like, it's an art form. You shouldn't just think about the money, blah, blah, blah. And he's, well, we all want to be full-time writers, and not very many of us are. And we need to really dive into how we can market our books and get our books out there so that we can make a livable wage. And I guess he got enough pushback, or he didn't get enough support in that area, where he decided to make his own Facebook group called 20 Books 50K, which the idea at the time, and obviously it's evolved. So the idea at the time was, if you write 20 books and you market them correctly and you sell, each book makes $8 or $9 a day, over a year, you'll pull in around 50K, which was a livable wage.
Randy, are you suggesting that merely writing a good book is not going to mean that you're going to make a living from it? That premise is something that I think is going to shock people, that the life of a writer is more than just writing. It's actually a really important point.
Yeah. So if we look at back what we were talking about, where the traditionally published books were 85% was going to the publishers, and most books make less than $5,000, you're probably, if you wrote 20 books and you made $5,000 of that, then that's $100,000 over the lifetime of those 20 books. So that's not a lot of money, right? That's why you have all these images of authors struggling authors, or always trying to write their next book or write their next article or write short story to get it published so they can pay for their food bills and stuff like that. So I think there's evidence out there, especially in the nonfiction world, where if you wrote a great book, what's that one called? Atomic Habits. If you have a following and you wrote Atomic Habits and you made $1 bazillion off of it, then you were doing pretty good. But I think it's more common in the fiction world, science fiction, fantasy. You're an author of a first or second book, even a bestseller, unless it was a bestseller for 52 weeks. You're not walking away with, you're not going to quit your day job.
This may be the wrong time to ask this question, and I don't want to be a potential downer early on in our session today, but this is on my mind. So I'm just going to ask you, Randy. And it would be, I have experience not with the book publishing world, but now with the shorter publishing on this site Medium that we've discussed before. The articles are usually 5 or 6 minutes long and people can publish one or two a day even. And they don't earn a lot of money from them. But the phenomenon I want to discuss with you for a moment is the distribution of success and earnings and what is reasonable for a person to expect. And I think it might be different in the book publishing world where people can make a workable living from it. They may not be between starving authors and the guy who wrote Atomic Habits. There's a bunch of people, but how does that distribution look like? I get the sense with the online blog type writing, there's a 98% tail that is earning pennies, $10, $20, $100. Not a lot of money, certainly not enough to make a living from. Even the very successful, the guys who are at the 1% are not earning enough money to live from just the writing on Medium alone. But I get the sense indirectly from listening to you a couple of times as we've been discussing this topic that it is possible for a regular writer who is writing books and marketing them. It is possible for more of those people to earn a good living. There's a big appetite for people to read books, and you might not be Stephen King or whoever, J.K. Rowling, that there are different phenomena that go into you being a super success, but there might be a fatter group of people who can make a living from this than I might have expected given my experience with the online blogging world. Do you think it's reasonable, in other words, for a person to think that if they work hard and make this their full-time job, they could earn a living?
The premise behind 20 books to 50K is that if you work hard and you learn the skills you need to, that's a true statement. And the skills are...
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I've heard that claim from 10,000 articles as well, saying do this to make $100,000 online. And I know they're selling snake oil. It sounds like you think they're not with 20 books to 50K.
So there's an article that came out about 2 years ago. It was analyzing what percentage of books get sold by an author. All right. It was looking at individual books from a traditional publishing company, right? So this is traditional publishing. So 65% of books sell less than 1,000 copies. Okay. That's anywhere from 1 to 1,000. All right. But if you say 1,000 copies, most authors are going to make 15% off the cover price. Well, not necessarily because it costs so much to make the book. So an author could conceivably make $1 or $2 off of each book, maybe. Okay. So if you say you spent a year to make that book and you sold less than 1,000 copies, you made less than $2,000 for that book. And so the idea behind 20 books to 50K is if you write 20 books and you're selling 1,000 copies a year. So this statistic is saying you sell less than 1,000 copies for the life of your book. But they're saying if you use the right marketing tactics, strategies, that you can continue to make those sales, then you'll make $50,000 a year, which they considered a livable wage at that time. I think that's a little higher now. So maybe it's 20 books to 100K or 20 books to 60, 70K or something like that nowadays. But so here, I'll just read the statistics. 65 books sell less than 1,000 copies. 1,000 copies. 5% sell less than 5,000 copies, which if you go back to, hey, I make $2 a book, that's only $10,000 ever in the life of the book. And 0.7% sell more than 50,000 copies, which is what they're saying you make $100,000 in the life of the book. So if you look at that, what the 20 books to 50K is trying to put out there, especially to indie authors, they're trying to give them strategies and develop skills on how to market your book, how to publish it wide, how to make more money from each book, and then also to write consistently, because people in the fiction world, in romance, fantasy, science fiction, thrillers, they like to read series. They like to read about the same character that they love. Like Jack Reacher, right? They'll read 20 of his books once they fall in love with him. Especially, and so the fact is you write consistently, and there's people out there before AI, there's people out there who are writing specifically to the market that they love and that the people who read those authors love. They're writing the tropes that those people love to read. If it's romance, it's the secret baby or the unexpected baby kind of romance where they had a relationship and then the woman got pregnant and the guy, either they broke up or the guy deployed on his military deployment or whatever, and he didn't know she had a baby and she had the baby by herself or something like that. And so that's a trope in romance. And some women love to read those kind of books over and over, and different ways that they got together and met and the different ways they got separated. And as long as it's new and new, they like it. And so these people write 3 or 4 books a year. There's some people that write 10 books a year. And there's some people that write 1 book a year. And some people write 1 book over 5 years. But there are people that are writing these books, these romance, fantasy, science fiction, to make money. They're writing a couple a year. They're writing one. They're in the process of writing one. They're in the process of editing one. They're in the process of publishing one. They're in the process of marketing one. And they're doing all of that. And if they have a really great partner, that partner's helping them.
All right. So this goes to one of the questions I was having. And I see already from what you just said, there is no specific answer, but I wonder if we can get to an average, which is how many books a year. To me, it sounds like this 20 books to 50K. I can already see the concept a little bit, but it doesn't happen all at once. It's an additive, cumulative process. Your 1 book makes less than your 2 books, and your 3 books start to earn more than your 1 book because each one continues to earn, especially as you gain into fan, they go back and they read your series. So it gets better and better until you're at a point where hopefully it really does start to look good. But that means, depending on how many books you write, you might be at least a 10-year process, and you got to support yourself for that 10 years while you start with, I'm earning $5,000 and then I'm earning $10,000. So that's something, I guess, that I'd like to get a sense of from your talking and hearing in this community. 2 questions, Randy. How long are people giving themselves? And I know it's going to be all across the map, but can you say, hey, on average, it's a 10-year journey? And then the second question is, can you already say, maybe you'll get into this, what % of time is spent non-writing on all the other stuff? The marketing sounds like it's quite important versus the writing. Is it a 50-50? You got to be really out promoting, publishing, getting your book out in front of people, social media posts. That whole aspect of it is something that I was underestimating. How important is the marketing? It sounds like this group is talking about not writing, but marketing. So anyway, those are the 2 questions. How long does the journey take on average, and what's your split of time, if you can say?
So there's no average, because some people...
Damn it, man. I want answers, easy answers.
Well, there's some people that are disciplined enough to carve the time to write 4 books a year. That's a lot of time, right? And then there's some people that can write faster than others. There's some people that can write 5,000 words a day, which is crazy to me. Though I write 5,000 words a day with my ghostwriting and stuff like that. But for my own stuff, I have a really hard time writing 5,000 words a day. I think most people would be satisfied with 2,000, and if you have a job, maybe 500 or 250, or just doing a little bit every day. If you write 500 words a day, you have 15,000 words in a month. And in 4 months, you'll have a 60,000 word draft, which is a decent sized book for a romance or even a science fiction fantasy. Usually they tend to be longer, but in 4 months, if you write 500 words a day, you'll have 60,000 words. In 6 months, you'll have 90,000 words, which is a decent sized book for any category. So in 6 months, you'll have a draft, and then you'll have to edit it and rewrite some pieces. And so if that's all you can do is 500 words a day, then you could feasibly, and I won't say easily, nothing's easy about it, but feasibly you can write, re-edit, market, and publish a book in a year. If you write 500 words a day, if you have the discipline to do that, you find it around your kids going to school. And if you have babies, you're feeding your babies and you're going to your work, your day job, and you're doing all that stuff. If you can find time to write, and 500 words a day, 500 words, most people can write in an hour. So you're talking about an hour of time.
Right. So I get what you're saying, that it's not easy, but I think you've put a lower floor on if you're going to pursue this approach. A book a year is doable, and you should be able to put yourself in a situation where you can do that, or else the strategy is not for you, right? We're not saying you got to write 4 a year or 6 a year or 10 a year. That's a different type of achievement, right? That's a total different type of...
Not everyone wants to be a writer. Some people just want to write books. So once again, it goes back to the goals.
What does that mean?
But not everyone wants to make their living as a writer.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Some people just love to write books. And some people want to write the books they want to write, which aren't always what the books that people want to read. So, and sometimes they do, they cross over. Sometimes you luck out and it's exactly what everyone wanted. But a lot of times it's the book you wanted to write and no one wanted to read it, or some very few people wanted to read it. So you only made a little bit of money off of it, right? So you talk about series, and if you write Reacher 1 and people love it, and you wrote 10 more books, they're going to read all the books. That's not true. Statistics say that the first book is read more than any of the others, because that's when people decide whether they're going to read forward or not. And then after they read 3 or 4 or 5, they may say, now it's getting similar and I don't want to read the rest of the series. But the statistics say as you get more in the series, people read less and less of those books. And that's why people will write a 5-book series and then start another 5-book series, because the first one's never read. So that's another kind of, these are all strategies that people talk about in this Facebook group that I'm saying that, hey, some people have 20-book series and they love writing that series. They know it like the back of the hand and they can whip out another story. But some people notice it dies out after a while and they decide to write a new series and market it a different way with the different tropes and stuff like that. So,
or you can do what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle tried to do and kill off your protagonist and create such an outraged response that you've got to bring him back.
Well, the Lee Childs tried to kill off Reacher in the last book, and there was such outrage that he brought him back.
Ah, interesting. He didn't follow the approach.
Now his brother or something writes a series for him because he said, I'm retired. I'm not writing anymore.
All right. So would you like to describe, you didn't answer my other question, which was, if you can answer it, roughly at a high level, is it 30-70 writing, marketing, 50-50, 1%, 99%?
So I think most authors would prefer like 0% marketing, someone else do it for me, and I like 100% of my writing. And then, but what people have to realize is, especially in this world, as the world gets more crowded with books in Amazon and wherever else they're being put, you have to stand out. And the only way you can write the best book ever written, you can write the next Fellowship of the Ring, you can write the next Dune or whatever you're saying. If you don't get it into people's hands, you have to stand out. You can't. And to tell you the truth, we talked about this, the traditional publishing guys don't have the bandwidth to market your book consistently. They'll help you market it for that first month where you're probably going to sell the most books. But after that, they have to move on to their next clients and market their books. So that's where their focus is going to be. So you have to think about marketing your own stuff. And also when you sign your rights away, you have to ask permission to market it in certain ways. You have to have permission to lower the price and say, hey, I want to take advantage of these things. If I lower the price, then it'll be better for the algorithm and I'll probably get exposed to more, so we'll sell more books. And the publishers now, we don't want to do that. So maybe you're not going to do that. So if you're not an indie publisher, if you're not self-published, those decisions are not yours anymore. And then you have to ask for your rights back. And a lot of people, the contracts will have stipulations. Like if it doesn't sell so many books in so many years, then I can buy my rights back for whatever the price is or whatever, some calculation or something like that. Or you can ask for your rights back at any time and say, I'll pay you this much for my rights back or something. And then because you think you can market it better and make more money, sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. It depends on the publishers.
So that all makes sense, that you lose flexibility. Of course, you lose some potential upside, and there is a cost, in other words, to the convenience of working with a traditional publisher. It's certainly not all upside. And that point, I think you've made clearly and well. The thing that I think of, and I see this in many areas of life, and the way I summarize it, Randy, is no one cares as much as you do about your issue. You will always be the best advocate for your position. And I think if you wish to be successful in any endeavor, a certain amount of maturity is required. There's work involved, there's trade-offs involved, there's compromises involved, and you should understand, and that's partly what we're trying to do here, is to help people understand these are some of the costs associated with becoming a successful book writer who earns their living from their writing. And what I hear you saying is, yeah, it's not all milk and honey in the land of traditional publishers. It's certainly not all milk and honey in the other land, but there you get some upside. In addition to the extra work, the upside comes in the form of you have complete control, basically, and therefore you're responsible for your outcome in a way.
Right. And so I think I read somewhere your average advance for a traditional fiction publishing book is like $10,000 or something like that. And that's for everything you put into that book is your 10,000, and you may have a deadline that's affiliated that if you haven't completed it yet. And so that's not a lot of money to live off of. And for depending on how much, just because you got a book deal doesn't mean it's going to come out tomorrow. Even if you finish the first draft, it might come out. The only example I can give you is the one I worked on, which was Operation Pineapple Express. And the deadline was March. For the first draft, the deadline was like March 30th. And I think they signed the contract in October. So it's 6 months. And we didn't start writing it till January because it was nonfiction. There's a lot of interviews that were required, and it was Christmas and Thanksgiving. There's a lot of stuff going on. And the two authors who hired me to help them had day jobs, and they spent the end of that year, October, November, December, trying to figure out how to run their business while they were going to write in January, February, March. And even then, they still got interrupted by their business because they still had to run their business after they finished writing. So once they got the contract, they got a pretty big advance. I don't know what it was. And we started writing in mid-January, and they're like, deadline 30 March. And when we got to 1st of March, they're like, hey, we need an extension. And the publishing company's like, well, here's the deal. You can finish it whenever you want to, but we have a plan. The plan is to release it on the anniversary, August 30th or August 15th, on the anniversary the Taliban took over Kabul, because that's what your book's about. And that's when all the news are going to be talking about it. And that's the best time to promote your book. And in order to do that, if we use backwards planning, as we call it in the military, we got to have it copy edited by this time. And then we have to have the cover done by this time. And we have to have the marketing started by this time. And that means we have to have the final draft to us by this time so they can format it, which means we have to have we usually say it takes 3 drafts. So that's the 3rd draft. So the 2nd draft has to be done by here. And then the 1st draft has to be done by there, which was March 30th, because that's when you said you'd have it to us. And that's also affiliated to your second advance payment, because you got your first payment in October. It was 3 payments. The second payment's when you delivered to us on March 30th. If you don't deliver it, you don't get the advance. And then the 3rd payment was supposed to be when it was published, which is supposed to be August 15th, which won't be done now because you're not going to be finished with the thing and you messed up our whole timeline. So yes, you could have an extension, but you won't get your advance payment. And then their eyes got wide, and they both looked, we were in a Zoom, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll get it done. And we hung up, and I stayed on with the 2 authors. Like, okay, Randy, sorry, we blew your scheduling plan. Cause I was like, okay, well, in order to do this, we estimated we had 20 chapters, which means we have to do 4 chapters a week and for the next 10 weeks, and blah, blah, blah. And then they kept sliding, like, oh, I didn't get my chapters done this week. I didn't get them this week. We kept falling farther and farther behind. So by March 1st, we had half the book written, and we had 4 weeks to write the rest. And
I hope they gave you a bonus for.
I didn't write it for them. They wrote it. I edited. I wrote some parts, but it was a scramble. And we got it turned in like the day before. Like, cause I was like, okay, we need who's going to do the conclusion? Get the conclusion done. I'm doing the rest. And it was close.
So that is a little bit the understandable loss of flexibility that comes from someone having a professional marketing plan and the dedicated timelines. Let's assume now that you're now Randy Searles. You have come up with an idea. You want to go down this route of writing books to earn a living. And you've got an idea in mind for a series. It's a time traveling ninja, and they go to battles throughout history. And we'll cut that out if you don't want to. Pardon?
Don't steal my idea.
No, it's you. And I want you to tell us now. Take us through, Randy. What would you do if you were to embrace, you still need to make a living and you haven't earned money from your books yet. So I'm assuming you continue your professional work now, at least 50%, but you tell me how you want to do it. How do you want to divide up your time, and what does your next 5 years look like if you go down the route of becoming I want to earn a living from my writing? What are you going to do now if you take away what you understand to be the best practices and lessons from this group?
So I think you have to everything starts from finishing the first draft, because you have to have something to pivot off of. You have to have something to get an editor who can help you make it better and fix the problems and identify the problems. And even if you know there's problems in there, give it to the editor so the editor can say, yes, this is a problem, but here's a couple ideas we have. Let's figure it out. So
depending on how much time the person has devoted, they've either taken 4 months or 6 months or whatever, they've finished the first draft and they've come to someone like you and said, Randy, help me turn this into something great.
Right. So
now this is you. So you're talking to yourself. You've written a good draft.
So when you got your first draft done, and I can't talk enough about writing quality work, and there's a lot of books on that, and trying to, because ultimately when you sell this book, even if you convince a crap load of people to buy it and read it, they're not going to buy your second one or any other books you have if this is not a very good book. So my suggestion, and I'm a developmental editor, so I'm a little biased in this, but I think you should send your first draft to a developmental editor or content editor. There's a lot of different names for it. And this person is going to read your whole book, identify plot problems, identify character arc problems, identify POV problems, identify theme problems, big problems with your book, and say, these are problems because of this and this. And then ideally, they're going to help you workshop a little bit on a Zoom call like this and say, let's talk about how we fix this problem, where we have to insert chapters or scenes, what should be taken out because they don't really apply to the message you're trying to give your readers, blah, blah, blah. So that's going to usually takes 2 to 4 weeks for an editor, depending on how long the book is, to give you feedback on that. So you have time to do other things. In my opinion, you should probably spend part of that for time, because you're still working your full-time job. If you're a normal person, you have a job because you haven't made any money with that book yet. If anything, you've just pushed out another 2 or 3 grand for the editor to look at it. So now you need to figure out what you're going to do to move this book forward. After you get the input from the editor, you're going to have to rewrite it, but you got 2 or 4 weeks to figure some other stuff out. One of the things is to start a platform, and a platform would start with a webpage, an author webpage. You're going to use this to sell your books. You're going to use this to direct your readers and your fans to your website. You may even want to make a newsletter, which is very popular now for authors, even if you only write 1 issue a month. It's reminding authors that you're out there, that you're working on your next book, or your readers. And then if you get a following of 50, 100, 500 people over the course of your newsletter, if you're just pushing it out there and you're just talking about the writing process and what your next book's going to be about and get people excited about it, and your book release and your audio book release and your signed book release and things like that, you have these fans that are following you for a reason. And we'll talk about Kickstarter. We talked about that before, but that's when you can start a Kickstarter for your next book. If you get 500 people following you, it's like, hey, I got a Kickstarter. If you want to get an advanced copy of the digital book, give me $2 on my Kickstarter or $5 on my Kickstarter, and I'll send it to you when I finish writing it, or something like that. That's also how you find ARC readers, which are advanced readers, to help you put Amazon. They get advanced copies and they can put Amazon reviews on your book. How you find beta readers to see if they can identify problems that before you send it to your editor or after you send it to your editor, other problems that they didn't like or tropes that they didn't like, things like that. So you have this 2 to 4 week period where you can make your webpage, get a newsletter out there, start gathering an email kind of a list. You can start designing your cover. You can hire someone for $50 to $5,000 to design a cover. And I really don't recommend, especially if you're not artistic, to making your own covers. But we've talked about in different episodes about making your cover match your genre and the type of book you're writing. So you can design your cover, figure out your title, your subtitle, the series title, all of that, and trying to just build that platform that you're going to have eventually to sell your book anyway. Then you're going to get your book back from the developmental editor, and you're going to edit it, and you're going to change stuff and delete stuff and add stuff and make it better. Now, at that point, depending on how confident you are with your book after you made all these changes, it's a final draft, or it's a almost final draft, and you can send it back to another developmental editor, the same one or a different one, and get more input because you made huge changes and you still want to make sure you got the character arc right. And so that depends on your comfort. I've had people that I've edited and they took everything I said, they put it in their book and they said, I'm ready to publish. And then they went to the next step. I've had people, I've given them a lot of advice. They had to make big changes in their book and they gave it back to me and they paid me again to edit it again. And then I gave them more feedback and then they paid me again. And they get more feedback and they get into this kind of rhythm where eventually I told her, I'm not going to edit it again. You need to publish this because it can always be better. You're always going to find something that you could make it a little bit better. And some people are never going to be satisfied, but you have to move that into the world and at some point. And so after I think I did 5 or 6 edits, I said, no, I'm not going to edit again. If I edit again, I'm doing it for free, but you need to just publish it. And she did. And it came out, it did pretty well. Nexus Point, in fact, I got it on my bookshelf behind me. And the second book, so Nexus Point is that one. And then this is her second book, The Burning Man. And I just edited her third book and gave her some notes on that. So she's working on her third book, which is called, I can't remember, Paradox. But so that after you get that, your final draft done, and then of course, if you're turning it in, you can spend more time on your platform and newsletter and stuff like that. And then you're getting involved with your social media, and there's a lot of authors that just don't want to be on social media, but it's really where you're going to market your book nowadays. You have to have your own social media, Instagram at least, if not Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. You don't have to be on everything. I'd pick 1 or 2 that you want to get familiar with. Ideally, eventually, if you're doing well, you maybe want to try to get on all of them, and you can repurpose content from one to the next. So it's not too hard. But I just told you a story offline, James, about this guy who was selling like 150, let's call them dollars. He's in the UK, so it was quid, but $150 a year for these 2 books that he had. And he wanted to be a professional author. So he wanted to do it. He made a deal with his wife. He's like, so, hey, what do I have to sell to quit my job and do this full time? She's like, if you make 100,000 quid a year, you can quit your job as a mental health nurse and be a full-time writer. But until then, we have kids, we have a household. I have a job, you have a job. Let's move forward with this. But 100,000. And he was making $150 a year on his books at that time. And he took a class on TikTok Sells Books in December of that year. The January, he made a promise to himself that he's going to post 3 times a day on TikTok for a year and see what happened. So he did. First month, he made 100 quid. He's like, holy crap, I almost made my whole year's income that I made last year in 1 month. This TikTok thing's working. He posted 900 times or 90 times, I guess, 3 times 30. And so the next month he did the same thing. He made 200 quid. The next month he made 400 quid. Then he made 800 quid. Then he stabled out around 600 to 800 quid for 4 or 5 months. Then he had one that went viral, got 1 million views, and he made a couple $1,000 quid that month. And by the end of the
money, do you have a sense where that money comes from? Is that from selling books, or is it from advertising? Or?
Oh no, selling books. So
he was gathering attention to himself with the TikTok videos, and by virtue of that, a certain number of people who watched it checked out his book.
Right, exactly. So
sorry to be ignorant here, but what kind of a TikTok video does an author write that, my kids show me TikTok videos, it's funny dances and people.
Well, also, no, it's not. So there's a thing called Book Talk, which is about selling books and reading books and anything to do with books and publishing books and stuff like that. That's what it's about. And it's called Book Talk. It's huge. The guy I'm talking about, his name is Adam Beswick. He writes mostly European and British fantasy kind of tales. Like he rewrote like Robin Hood and King Arthur, Blackbeard, things like that. There's another woman called Sasha Black, who he mentored. And so those are 2 really good examples, but there's a lot of examples. Each genre is different. And whenever he talks about each genre is different, you have to figure out what the readers and the fans like and the tropes they like. And so these TikTok videos, most of them aren't long. They can be long form, but a lot of them are just short. So he did 3 a day. I went to his talk last year, and people are like, how long did it take you to do 3? And the first month, it would take me like an hour to do 3 or longer. Because I was trying to figure it all out, what worked and what didn't work and what was popular and what resonated with the people that I wanted that were buying my books. But over time, I've been doing it for 2.5 years, religiously, 3 a day. And now it takes me 15 minutes. And I go down, I make breakfast for my daughter. She goes upstairs, packs her bag, gets ready. And during those 15 minutes, I make the 3 for the day. And then she comes on, I take her to school. And so in a way, eventually, and then you can repurpose. Like he told me that he told the conference I went to, he was there the last week too. I didn't realize I could repurpose this in TikTok. Like the videos I made in TikTok, I made a year's worth 3 times a day of 1,000 unique videos. and I didn't really reuse them. And even the viral one that went to 1.2 million, I didn't reuse that till 6 months later. But what I found out was statistic wise, every single video was seen by 90% new people because of the algorithm and who it gets and who it gets in front of and all these things. The real answer is that new people are seeing it. They didn't see my old ones because they weren't following me at the time. So now it's getting in front of 90% new people every time. So nowadays I repurpose the successful ones. I repurpose those every month or so. And so I got this library of stuff that I can repurpose. And
That's a really good tip, Randy. I've heard people talk about repurposing before, and I always thought it meant you take the same content and use it on different sites. And it does mean that, but what you're describing and what this guy does is a really helpful point. And I think one that makes the job much, much easier. This is content you've already created and already used on the same platform. You're just trying to make sure that it gets in front of new viewers. And what has been his experience with that? Obviously, it's been positive, huh?
Yeah. And he uses, I've seen his stuff, and it's about his writing process. And this is authors across the board on Book Talk. It's about their process. It's about them reading other books. It's about, hey, I got a new book coming out, and this is what it's about. These are the tropes it's going to, if you like Robin Hood, you'll love my book. That's what it says. If you like Robin Hood, if you like Britannic legends, you'll like my book series. If you like the Avengers, what if the Avengers lived in a fantasy world? What would they look like? And so Robin Hood is Hawkeye, right? And so he compares his different heroes to things that people who read his type of books would like.
And right. This is not trying to trick people. It's really actually trying to say, this is what I do. If you like this, then you will like my book. So I know marketing always has a little bit of taste to me. I'm trying to sell something to people that they don't necessarily want. I'm trying to trick them. This is not what you are describing. You are.
So you don't want to trick people because you piss them off. So if someone goes to if they go to your website and they read your book and you mismarketed it and you misrepresented it, you said, this is like the Avengers, and then it's about Robin Hood, then they're not going to read any more of your books. You're lying to them. If you say this is a retelling of the Robin Hood legend, and I was like, I like Robin Hood, I'll read that book. And I did. I picked his first book. I was like, I like Robin Hood. And the first book is called, he has a really good titles. It's called The Forest of Vanity and Valor. So that's the first book. And it's that his books are fantasy legends, and he rewrites it's a little bit surprising. They're rewrites of them.
I think it's important though, to just dwell on the point for a moment, Randy, because a great deal of what you see online with people trying to build their online presence is clickbait. They are actually just trying to get you to click on their article and see their thing because they're earning money. Let's say it's advertising money from X or YouTube. That's not the approach here. That's not the approach at all, because commitment to a book or a book series is a much longer thing. And you might get them to look at your title, but if you've tricked them, you might even get them to buy the book, right? That's it. They're done if they're not happy with you. So I would say almost all the advice I've seen from people on how to build an online presence and how to grow your presence eventually devolves into some sort of clickbaity type thing. And that is not the approach here, and I'm happy to hear it. But
and so his viral one, which is really good. It's basically, he doesn't say anything in the video. It's him walking through his house or watching TV, and then he goes in and he starts typing, and the written word is like me when I got angry at the rewrite of Robin Hood starring Russell Crowe or whatever. And my mom and my wife saying, well, why don't you write one? And I was like, and then I did. And that's the one that went viral. And it's a lot better than me telling about it when I watch it. And I've seen it a couple times when I watch TikTok. It's come up on my feed again because he keeps repurposing it because it did really well. And I watch it every time because it speaks to the writer in me. Like, I saw something that that I didn't like someone else's interpretation. So I wrote my own version, and that speaks to writers. So that's why it probably went popular. There's a story that was a newspaper last year, maybe 2 years ago, about a gentleman who wrote a book. He traditionally published it like 12 years ago. Sold all right, didn't sell well. And his daughter, who was young at the time, I don't know the whole story, I might get this wrong, but she didn't realize that he had published this book, or she had forgotten about it. But when she got to college, I'm going to promote my dad's book. And so she did And I think she used the same music that he used in his video. So maybe he got that idea from her, or she got it from him. I don't know. And it was the same thing. It's like when my dad writes a book, blah, 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 and then I discover it and I want to promote it or something. And she did a couple videos on TikTok. They all went viral. The book became a bestseller overnight after 12 years. And then and they started writing a second book. So there's more than one example of this. And then the same gentleman, Adam, was in the thing this year. I went to the one last year, and he was in the writing conference this year. And some people might say that we missed the boat because book talk is so big and there's so many people there. And how do you promote your book is as unique in this world of where there's so many books out there. And I'll say to you, after I did that talk in the conference last year, a young lady walked up to me and said, could you help me get there? And we made a pinky promise, and then we took a picture of the pinky promise. And then she beat around the bush, but in September, October of 2023, she got with me. I mentored her for a month, and she made this shirt for me. And the shirt had a bunch of different quotes of what she called him during the mentoring process, which were all good names. Like, you're a ninja. This is amazing. You're great. You're an incredible mentor, whatever, all these great things. And on the back, it had the picture of them with the pinky promise in the back. So she went, I don't know what exactly she was selling before she did TikTok, but she wasn't selling 100,000 a year. And by February, so 5 months later, she was selling, she went up to the 6 figures a year amount that she was selling now with doing TikTok 3 times a day and trying. So he's saying you can still do this. It's consistency. It's every genre is not the same. She writes dark romance. He writes fantasy. So what worked for him may not work for her, but the principles are there, and appealing to what your readers like and letting them know the tropes that they like. So if you're writing a dark romance and you're putting quotes from your book on there about a secret baby, or if you like these following things in your books, then you should read my books. Now, there's a good example. This guy was actually talking about Facebook ads, but it's the same application, right? Except it's worse, because in Facebook ads, you pay per the click. And ideally, you're getting a click to purchase analogy. Hey, every 10 clicks, someone buys my book. And then I make more money than I'm paying for the clicks. Well, he wrote a book that was a cross between the Pirates of the Caribbean and Lara Croft. So it was like a female protagonist who was a pirate ship captain or something like that. And so he was looking for the appropriate image to put on Facebook ads. And he found this girl with a low-cut bodice, and she was dressed in like pirate gear with a pirate hat. And she had 2 flintlock pistols in her hand and one in her belt. And this was the thing he put out there, is if you like Lara Croft and Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going to love my books. If something like that was his pitch, right? And that's what went out in Facebook ads. And so he got a ton of clicks from a lot of guys who went to his webpage and didn't buy his book because they thought it was something else. And so he paid a lot of money for those clicks and then didn't get the return because he misadvertised his book. And then he had to go back and really look at, okay, maybe I put a picture of a pirate ship on there and maybe I less sex and more adventure or something like that. So it's all about being honest with your potential readers, especially if you're paying for the clicks, and trying to find new readers that are going to love what you do. So going back to unless you had questions about that, I was going to go back about what are you doing? We got off track about what's the next step in your.
Right. No, you're good. I do want to come back and understand what it is that you're going to do yourself that's different here. Is it the newsletter that you're going to spend time on? Is it the social media? Can you see yourself on the author's journey to make a living from your writing? Can you see yourself making 3 TikTok videos a day? Is that something that you think a normal person can do?
So if you look at the author TikToks, now there's some that they were probably in drama in high school. So they got gimmicks that are really good. Like this one, I wish I knew her name because I'd love to promote her, but you could probably just look up Book Goblin. So she has her alternate persona is the Book Goblin. And so she has herself on a couch reading a book, and she's like, "Book Goblin, what are you doing?" And then she got her book goblin self has a gray hoodie and you can see her face and she's got a book. She's like, book goblin has third book in her favorite series. And he's, oh, great. Did you like it? He's like, no, it's very scary. The person died. She's basically got this alter persona as the book goblin, and book goblin's looking out the window, waiting for the mailman. Book goblin waiting for book that she ordered, and it's not here yet. Very angry. And so it's this persona. So you have these little skits that people do. So that's one way to do it. And people like the skits. And I follow her just because I want to see book goblin skits. And so that's entertaining for me. But in the case of Adam, he doesn't really have those gimmicks. He talks about his books. He talks about his process. He talks now about direct marketing, which we can talk about later, about not giving all his money that he's making to Amazon and to all these other platforms because they're taking 30, 40, 50% of the profits to put on the platforms and selling all his books directly from his website. And so if you do that, he gets 90% of the profits. So you're actually helping him with the profits so that he can spend more time and make the books that you love. And so he talks a lot about that on that. He talks about his process. He advertises his books. He talks about, he compares his books to different things. And that's what he does that's what his TikTok videos are about. And then he repurposes on Instagram. I think he's got 80,000 followers on TikTok and 40 on Instagram or something like that. And he didn't start on Instagram. He did Instagram later. So I actually am writing a book, science fiction book. So time traveling book about going back to the Battle of Thermopylae. So and I'm going to start all this because I'm pitching it so much. I'm talking to authors about it all the time. I'm really excited about it. So yes, so what am I going to do? So if you look at the normal authors that don't have gimmicks, that don't have book goblin and the other things, this other lady, Liz Shipley, is great because she does this thing where the camera's looking at her, she's typing, and then she's got a speak over or something, which is where thoughts is. And then he walked up to the prince who was huge and muscular and had long wavy blonde hair. So it's just a facade of what the average romance book. And his name was Hans or Franz or one of those other Hans names. And so it's very entertaining. So that's her gimmick. So everyone's got a gimmick. If you get the gimmick, great, that works. But a lot of people like me don't have the drama experience to do that. So it doesn't work for us. So we're doing what Adam's doing. So what Adam does, I assume, and I just watched a YouTube video on it the other day, go spend 4 hours with your wife and make stock videos of you typing, of you reading a book, of you reading a different book, of you just all these videos, because the videos have a lot of the same background stuff. And you're just either writing stuff in there for them to read that are talking about your tropes in your book or your process, or you're doing a speak over. And you can do that. So if you have the videos done, if you have 20 videos of you typing and reading books and contemplating what you're thinking about and stuff like that, if you look at these book talk videos of authors, 50 to 80% of them are that. So you get to make these 20 stock videos that you can use the videos over, and then you just have different words on the screen or different speak over that touches on what you're trying to message to your readers. Then that makes the videos a lot easier to do.
Now, I'm just going to say, I do have the sense that while a significant success is possible, and I like the story of the lady who came not long ago and was able to go from something to quite a bit more by following the approaches that we're discussing, I do have the sense that the competitive landscape has gotten more difficult. On the one hand, it's easier because anyone can do this from their home if they have a computer and a few bits of stuff and the time and attention to do it, but you are competing with the whole darn world. And if someone is willing to put in more time and effort than you are and has that couple, 2, 3 extra bits of, I actually have some drama experience and I'm willing to put 5 videos a day up and whatever. Or let's just come out and say it. You're an attractive woman who's willing to wear different clothes and you'll get half of the world to watch just because that's how guys work. Anyway, what I want to say is it's a little bit at the same time, both encouraging and disheartening, because it's not quick. It's not easy. There's a tremendous amount of hard work and you're going to be competing with people who are also putting in hard work. And it's not just the people in your town anymore. It's the whole darn world. You'll have a guy in Indonesia who's working 3 times as hard as you and a guy in China. And I don't know, it's a little bit disheartening if I listen to you, Randy, because it just really makes it seem like the whole world is hustling and you got to out hustle them.
So I think it's good that you brought up the woman wearing whatever, attracting more followers. are those people that are following her going to read her books? Because that's the goal, right? You can have
I
80,000
understand.
followers, but if only 500 bought the books, then, and so you have to attract, it's just like that guy who did the picture with the girl
Yeah.
at the flux. You're attracting the wrong people. You need to attract the people that are interested in your book, and that you have to catch them in the first second or two, right? So you need to have the, the first couple words that are spoken or read need to grab you. Do you like Robin Hood books? I do. Yes. What are you talking about? What are we talking about here? I'm gonna pay attention to that. Do you like Excalibur? I do. I'll watch that one too. Do you like Long Walks on the Beach? No, not going to watch that one. Flip. So you're attracting the people, you're snagging, and the people who are going using TikTok and Instagram Reels are flipping through their thing for an hour a day. What's the average now? 2 hours a day or whatever. And they're going through 50, 100 things, right? And you have to attract them with words or sounds or an image like that. And so you need to figure out what that marketing snag is, that hook, so that you are attracting the right people. Because I'm looking for good books. That's why I'm on Book Talk. That's why I subscribe to Book Talk. That's why my Talk account is oriented towards Book Talk. When I first started, because they knew who I was, a male, whatever, 40 something, whatever, male, blah, blah, blah. I got a lot of OnlyFans chicks. But as I started not watching their content and watching book content, it reoriented towards Book Talk stuff. So I get a lot more book stuff than other stuff for that account.
Yeah. I guess it reminds me of what we discussed with one of our other authors on the show a while back, the T-shaped lawyer, where you have maybe the skill, and this is what I have to get past myself in my head as I'm listening to you, not resisting the concept. You have the skill of being a writer. Great. You're a lawyer. Great. But if you want to be successful in the broader enterprise, you've got to learn and be willing to apply other skills. You've got to learn how to have an online presence and to communicate and to market your books, because that's just part of the package of now what makes a person stand out. And then you said it actually right at the beginning. It is not enough to write a great book, period. You actually have to get your book in front of people who want to read your book. And all you're discussing is ways that in our current era are available to one to do that. And you're not saying that this is the only way that works. I haven't heard anything like that. It is, look, you might be Facebook, it might be TikTok, it might be Instagram. You might be a person with a funny character, but you might not. And so there's, and that's the inclusive and encouraging part, which is go with what works for you, with what you are good at, and be true to yourself, both in the sense of respecting your genre, respecting your readers. And I would add, respect what it is you can do, where you're not going to be something you're not, right? You're not going to suddenly become a comedian if you're not funny. So go with what works for you in your style of marketing your book.
Right. And
okay,
then
I'm with you.
all right. Well, here's the other thing though. So the ones with the characters, right? I'm not going to buy their books. I don't like dark romances. I'm watching their feed, and I'm actually talking about it on my podcast. So maybe people who like dark romances are going to look for these people because they like dark romances and also book goblins entertaining. So,
All right, so hold on a second. Is there other ways to monetize that online activity? Let's say you decide, because if you're spending half your time on marketing, you are learning new skills that are different than book writing. What if you decide you're actually really good at it and more people are watching your videos than are buying your books, but you're okay with that because you actually like creating videos? Have you seen people go down that route? And is there a way to make money besides selling books? Or I don't know if you can comment on that.
So Adam, the TikTok guy, has started his YouTube channel and monetized it in a week. To monetize it, you have to get 1,000 followers and like 4,000 views, or I forget the specifics, but we haven't monetized our YouTube channel yet. And we've been doing it for a year and a half, but he monetized it in a week. So he's making some money from YouTube, probably not a lot, but he actually put his first 2 books, audio books, on YouTube and for free. Well, we can get into Adam's. Adam is a big proponent of direct distribution. Puts more money in the author's pocket and takes it away from Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Apple Books and things like that. And that's all about, so he's all about organic marketing, which is anything you can do for free. So the year he spent 3 times a day posting on TikTok, and he's done it for 2.5 years now, it was all free marketing for him. It was free. And it's the thing that worked the best because he had made $150. He made more than $150 that year, but he took out his marketing budget, which was on Facebook and Amazon ads, which didn't work for him. So that's why organic marketing is TikTok, Instagram Reels. He repurposes his TikTok videos on Instagram Reels. And now he's doing direct distribution, which means what? When he was selling his audiobooks on Audible, he was getting like $2 a book. They sell that thing for 15 to 20 bucks a piece, right? So he's making what, 10% or something? That's ridiculous. He was really upset about that. So what can I do to increase how much money I'm making off my creation I created? And so he sells his audiobooks straight off, download off his website, and he directs all his social media to his website. You want to buy my audiobook? I'll sell it for $10 instead of $20, like Audible does. And you can download it straight from my website, and then I'll make all the profit.
And then answers another question I had from you before, which was how important is the website versus just the newsletter? Because it's easy to set up a newsletter. You go to Substack, blam, you can send it out the same day. But the reasons for having a site, an actual website, are like now you're just describing. Here's my books and my audiobooks, and you can buy them here. And so it is worth the hassle of having a website exactly for the purpose of controlling as much as possible about the distribution of your own work.
Well, I
not
think
just communicating with fans.
I think that it's pretty well established that the newsletter is a really important part of collecting emails of your fans so that you can promote your next book and get pre-sales. So pre-sales are going to go into the computation of whether you're a best-selling book in Amazon that first week, that first day.
Now, the newsletter was easy for me because it's easy to do. It was more the website. Do I need a website? Because that's hard. You got to have it hosted somewhere. There's just more administrative stuff that a person has to learn. It's hey, hold on a minute. Now I'm a marketer. Now I'm a website owner. And now I got to figure out how to.
No, you have to be a master or jack of all trades to do this, to be an indie author for sure. And you can farm a lot of this out, but it costs money to farm it out. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It needs to be a website that tells people who you are, tells people where to find your books, tells people how to get involved with your newsletter and what they're going to get out of your newsletter. And then ideally you're selling your books there too. So if you're selling your digital books, you can sell them through BookFunnel, which is a really popular platform. Takes a percentage of the books they download for you, but it takes all of the brain work from you because it'll say, how do you want your book? Apple Book, Barnes and Nobles, Kindle, and then it'll give you directions on how to download it. And you've already uploaded it into BookFunnel and it'll take 10%. So now you're making 90% instead of 70% like you would in Amazon. And then if for your print books, you can use something like BookVault, and BookVault will have print on demand, and you'll sell all these things on Shopify on your website. And then once it buys a print book, whether it's paperback or hardback, you've already given all the information to BookVault so they can print on demand. And then the link takes them to BookVault. They put all their information, their address, and then they take 10% of the profit. You're making 90% of that, where in Amazon, you'd be making like 60 or 50% of the profit. So now you're making a lot more profit. And then this goes back into once you get the newsletter and you get your social media beefed up for your first book, you can use that for a Kickstarter later on, like we were talking about in your prior episode, where let's say you just got 500 people that are willing to give you $3 a piece or $5 a piece. That's $2,500 to offset your editing and your cover and all that stuff before you even print your book. Because right now, as a first-time author in your first book, you're having to pay the editor yourself. You're having to pay the copy editor. You're having to pay for the cover and all that stuff. And that's money that's taken away from you becoming a professional author. But if you can get that ahead of time by starting a Kickstarter campaign for your next book, then that just helps you a little bit more.
The impression I have, these are really great tips, Randy, and we'll make sure to include in the show notes the links to some of the resources that you've just mentioned and earlier as well. The impression I have is nothing in life comes for free, and passive income requires a great deal of active work before you get to the stage of potentially earning passive income later. And I've observed that in other settings as well. You really got to put in the upfront work. This whole activity of making a living as a writer is very front end loaded. You got to work like crazy to get both the body of work, but then also the audience and the attention to the point where, oh yes, it's great. I now have this income coming in because I have all these books and people can find them and they download them. And now I'm retired to Spain and have a pool outside that I can just enjoy when I wish, or whatever the dream is of a person for what they're going to have as a future point. It's not it's not an easy road. The life of an indie author does not strike me as carefree.
I'm not sure it's any easier on the traditional publishing side because we've talked
No,
about
I'm contrasting author versus go do a 9 to 5. No, seriously, your salary's a great thing because so many of the troubles that we're now talking about, you get different troubles. Of course, I know that, and we'll do a future episode on comparing a 9 to 5 versus your side hustle or your main full time hustle. My takeaway so far is yes, there's a path. There's a path that, and you'll get good advice from people who are doing it on. And it sounds like this Facebook group is great at sharing generously the tips and ideas, but by God, you're going to work too. This isn't going to happen, probably not overnight, and certainly not without your effort. But if you want it, and the stories that you described about the people who've made it successful showed their clear goals by setting a number, putting it something on their T-shirt, and you could tell that they were committed to this and really were putting the effort in. And I suspect you're going to find a lot of people who think they want it, but realize that the effort is more than they're willing to put in, and so they drop out along the way.
So there's also, you were talking about, hey, you're learning all these new skills. Can they monetize those? There's people do it all the time. Like you published your book. It was successful. You did all the marketing you had to do. You figured it all out. People want to hear from you. Now you can talk on podcasts and advertise your books while you're saying, this is my author process. This is my marketing process. This is my publishing process. There's authors turned YouTube. I don't know if sensation is the right word, but they have a lot of followers and a lot of people that view, a lot of views. Mandy Lynn is one that I watch regularly, and she basically is focused. She's actually written books on how to market, publish, and do your book. And she has a checklist book where you with fill in stuff where you're like, okay, what's my marketing plan? What's my publishing plan? And stuff like that. And she's very smart on this. But there's a lot of people that have went that way, started a YouTube channel. She actually has a course on how to format your book using Adobe Inline Inside, something like that. I forget what it's called, but one of the Adobe programs. And then she also has one on how to do your own covers. So, and she pays they charge $60 for those courses, but and I've seen a lot more ones that charge a lot more, and that's really nice of her. And then gives you the information so that you can do it on your own. So you don't have to pay someone to do it. So, and then there's people that have done courses on how to format your book using a program called Vellum or using one called Atticus, which is you have to format your book in a special way to be in the EPUB. And so these are programs that help you do that so that you can upload it into Kindle and stuff like that.
So in other words, even if the writing thing doesn't work out exactly as planned, you might have additional ways to monetize the things that you've learned, your experience, your skills, and people are doing that. And it is a legitimate thing. Not to say that there aren't scammers out there. There are people who will sell you their course and it's a piece of junk, but that's a different issue. There are legitimate benefits. There's two Adobe products I see. There's something called InCopy and then InDesign.
InDesign, yes. All right. It's InDesign.
Yeah. All right.
The other thing we haven't talked about, so we're talking about marketing, like organic marketing, and then there's paid marketing, which is Facebook ads and Amazon ads. And there's courses on that, and there's free stuff on YouTube on that. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that by any means, but it seems to be working. I met women who are writing historical romance novels, and I don't know their name off the top of my head, but they're making $10,000 a month marketing their romance books on Facebook, Meta, Facebook ads. The concept, the lecture I saw on that, the guy's, okay, there are 2 billion people on Facebook, 2 billion people. If you reach on your Facebook ads, and you're selling 20,000 books, if those people if those 0.001% of the Facebook people want your book because it's a niche they like, and you've hooked them to click on your ad and go and buy your book, you've sold 20,000 books, which is more than 80% of the people who sell books right now in traditional publishing. If you do 0.0001, you get 2,000. You're still up there in the top 50%. So
that's true, Randy, but I'm always skeptical of appeals to large numbers. On the one hand, yes, go to where the people are, but Facebook ads is aware of their reach and they charge accordingly. So you don't get anything for free.
Well, they charge by clicks, and there's classes on this, and I'm not an expert, but this guy was like, I spend $600,000 a year on advertising on Facebook for my books, and I make $2 million a year. So every buck I put in, I get $4 back. And so it works for some people. And I was sitting across from a woman and it works for her. That's all she advertises on Facebook. And she's making $10,000 a month. So it, it doesn't, it takes finesse. It takes time. All of this takes time. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out what works for your readers to attract your readers, that hook. So he's the one that talked about the girl with the flintlock pistols and how he lost a bunch of money because he misadvertised. It's about advertising. It's about getting a good click to buy ratio and getting the right image and the right verbiage on the Facebook ad so that the person who clicks on that ad knows exactly what they're getting. And then that way you're getting a good click to purchase rate. If you try to trick them, like we were talking before, you try to trick them, it's not going to work for you. So you have to be very honest about what you're advertising. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about was going wide. And by going wide, we mean you're not just advertising on Amazon. You're not just publishing your book in Amazon. You're publishing your book on Barnes and Noble, or you're publishing your book on Amazon Books. You're getting your book into libraries. And there's other companies that can help you with that. One is Draft to Digital. Draft to Digital is primarily digital copies of your book, and they will get it onto Overdrive and Libby, which are used by all the libraries. They'll get it in worldwide out there. They'll get it into India, which is the largest English speaking country in the world. They'll get it into South Africa. They'll get it in Australia and UK. And they got connections with the big book, the Amazon type companies in these places, and they'll get your digital book out there, and they charge 10% of the profit you would make. So there's a certain percentage, just like Amazon will charge you 30% to get your digital book up there. These other companies in other countries are going to charge some percentage. And then Draft to Digital, because of these contacts they've made, they're going to charge another 10% that they're going to get, and you're going to get the leftover. But this is a market that you wouldn't have touched otherwise. Then there's Ingram Spard, which is primarily print books, print on demand, but print on demand across the world. And so these are, once again, markets that you wouldn't have access to. And Germany and Spain are growing as far as book markets are concerned. And so you can translate your books. So the founder of 20 Books, 50K spoke at the beginning of the conference. And there are no rules. There are no rules. He's like, how many people here have one book out? How many people have 5, 10, 50? He's like, how many people have 1,000 books out there? And he raised his hand. And he's like, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you what's possible. There are no rules. If you have one book, one ebook out there, if you have 10 ebooks out there, and then you put them on audiobook, you have 20 books out there. If you have 20 books out there and then you change them and you translate them and put them in German, now you have 40 books out there. And you need to relook at what you're doing and put them and be willing to step out and look at all of the possibilities, because there's more markets than just the English market. Even though the English market is the highest reading market, these other languages are growing.
So obviously, from what you already said, people will be novices at the beginning of the process. They may take a course, whatever, they'll learn stuff, they get better over time. But the guy started taking an hour preparing his TikToks, and now he does them in 15 minutes. Multiply that by 20 different areas. I got to be a website publisher. I got to be a newsletter publisher. I got to know how to use this online print, this print on demand service, whatever. There's a big learning curve, it sounds. And I want you to come back to the question I asked you and make an estimate of the first. Let's say you're starting out and you want to see if you have what it takes to be an indie writer and do this on your own. How much of your time is going to be spent writing and how much is going to be spent everything else? I'm guessing it's at least 50-50 for a period of some years.
I think it's a good estimate, but it also depends on, so if we talk about the guy that writes 4 books a year, right? And so he's got books in different phases. He's got the concept book he's outlining. He's got the book that he's finishing writing. He's got the book that he's about to publish. So he's got the pre-publish, pre-marketing, and he's got the post-marketing.
Right.
That
his ever-growing catalog of,
So hypothetically, let's say you spend an hour on social media every day, right? And you actually, let's just say you spend 7 hours a week on social media. Maybe you spend 4 hours on Sunday making all of the social media stuff for the rest of the week. And then you launch it on those days. And it only takes you 10 minutes a day to launch all that stuff. All right. And then all that is marketing for all your books. Cause if you're marketing the first book, you're marketing the whole series. So cause they're always going to go to you're marketing your new books and stuff, but
No,
you're,
no, I get it. There's efficiencies, there's economies of scale, there's also benefits you get. That's why I say passive income is incredibly active at the beginning and it gets better over time.
I would say like when you're getting ready to publish, you have some check the block kind of things that you have to do for pre-publishing to get it up there and get pre-orders and stuff like that. So you may down your writing time for that 2 weeks while you're trying to do pre-publish. And then maybe after the publish is final, then your writing time goes up. I would say most people, there's some outliers out there that are writing like 4, 5, 8 hours a day, but most people are writing like, hey, after 3 hours, I'm done. So I write in the morning when the kids are at school, or I write, my wife knows not to bother me between 3 and 6 or whatever the deal is. And you have your writing rhythm. A lot of people will do it that way, right? So and then some people are really lucky to have some supportive partners that are like, I'm going to take the distribution and webpage management over from just teaching. So there's definitely it'd be nice to have a partner to help you out. And most of these writers are married and they have supportive partners because their partner doesn't have to work anymore because they've made a pretty good living.
Here's a question, and I don't know, we've talked a lot on it, so we probably can also bring it in and wrap things up. But the question that just occurs to me is in between the solo person, the person working with their partner, Facebook groups that help people like 20 books to 50K, there's probably 7 or 8, I don't know what the right number is, key disciplines associated with the writing and publishing and marketing of your book. Are you aware of little collectives of people? You get 10 like-minded authors and you say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to split this up. I'm going to be the TikTok guru and I'll help all of you guys prepare your TikToks. Or so a little collective. I would be tempted to want to come together with, I don't know, it doesn't have to be 10 people, whatever, a small group of like-minded people where you share the tasks and cross market the hell out of each other. Or maybe it's too competitive that people are worried about cannibalizing.
I don't think people are that competitive. I don't think because there's more than enough people out there who want to read more. And there's people that read 5 books, romance books a week. And so they always find a new fan. I think the problem with social media is it seems to be more effective if it's personal.
Yeah.
And so people have tried to outsource this and it doesn't seem to work the same way when you outsource it. There are definitely companies that can get you to a certain level by making sure you're regularly posting and you meet once a week and say, all right, and so if you're producing in other venues, like if you're making YouTube videos, you can hire a company, say, I'm going to make a YouTube video. I'm going to make 3 a week. All right. Or 2 a week, which is like the set average. I'm going to make 2 a week and I'm going to send you, the company, my YouTube videos. And then you can make 16 TikTok shorts and Instagram shorts and you can do all that. And you have control over my social media. So you can just upload them and you can take the words and put them on the screen and find the hooks and stuff. And there's people that'll do that for you, but that's a person that's already making content in another venue that they could do that. So, but if you're just going, hey, market my book, here's a picture of my book and here's what it's about, they can only do so much with that. Right. And it's not very personal. And then I imagine a good company would say, okay, I need some stock videos, do a video of you typing from this angle and this angle, do one thinking, reading. And then maybe that is something out there. I don't know of it, but maybe that's a possibility. I just don't think that the group of 10 authors trying to figure it out themselves.
Yeah, no, I understand. All right. So it's covered a lot of ground on this one, maybe. I'm always impressed by how much substance there is to this one. I don't think we have fully mined and exhausted the topic yet. What would you leave by way of words of encouragement? And I don't want to wrap it up too quick. If there was other stuff that was important that you didn't get to yet, say it. But otherwise, what words of encouragement would you leave to people who've come this far, are wondering, is this something I want to pursue?
I think the key from everybody I talk to is consistency. When you talk to people that aren't succeeding, a lot of times what I hear is, I know I have to be more consistent or do more. And the people that are successful never stopped. Like the guy who's doing 3 TikToks a day, he's still doing 3 TikToks a day, right? And his following is still growing. So it's not like you reach a level and I'm good, I'm not going to do it anymore. It seems like everyone is continuing that process and they just made it a little bit easier, a little bit less time consuming and things like that. So I think consistency is like the number one thing in your writing and in your all the other skills necessary. And I would also include, so writing, marketing, including your social media, especially all your organic marketing. And the third one would be your learning, because I probably do 3 learning mediums a month, whether it's a new task that I want to get better at, a book about how to make my editor. I just bought a book the other day, how to make my editor webpage attract more clients. So I look for those things and try to, learn more about the whole process every month for sure. So I think it's those 3 things, being consistent in those 3 things and not stagnating and sitting in your office writing and putting everything else, blocking it all out. You have to write the first draft to start. But once you start go down that road, you got to be open to all these other things. A lot of people, the consistency for writing is the hardest, right? Because you have to block off that time from the world, from the packages being delivered, from your kids needing help with their homework, from your wife needing help cleaning the house, from all that, everything that needs to be done to be a member of the family and society. And then somewhere in there, you have to block off the time to actually do the writing, because that's the first step. You have to have something to publish, to market, to talk about, to fix, to finish. So the first draft is probably the most important, and then consistency after that.
These are some really excellent tips, Randy. I appreciate that summary. And I think that is good news for people who are listening and are taking this seriously. So I'll say from my side, thanks a lot, Randy. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. And we look forward to having you on next time. Click subscribe, follow us, and hopefully you like what you're listening to. Otherwise, let us know.
All right. Thanks, guys.
We'd love to hear what you think. So please comment on the show with your thoughts. We read all of your comments.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for subscribing. See you next time.